All right, Scott and I are here today. We're going to be doing a little bit of division predictions, division expectations, taking a little bit of look into some teams. We're going to be starting with, some classic East Coast bias, starting out in the AL East. Scott, who are you picking as the favorite out of the AL East?
I think that this division is going to be maybe the most intriguing division in baseball. It's either this or its NL counterpart, in my opinion. And I just think that there are 5 teams in the AL East that, if they were in any other division, would be looked at as like, oh, this team could make a legitimate run at the top. I think the Yankees are still the favorite, and I still am going in with an expectation that they're going to win the division. But Toronto, I think, had a really good offseason. They're going to put together a 90-ish win season, I'm sure, if they stay healthy. Tampa Bay is always a threat to win 88 to 92. And then the most intriguing conversation for me personally is at the bottom of the division, where a lot of people think that the Red Sox are going to be the last place team, and I actually still like the Red Sox. Which is
Really?
crazy for me to say out loud, but I think
I
that
don't
a
think
lot
either of
of
us want
people
to
are
admit that.
focusing on what the Red Sox lost and are just like they like dunking on people and like trolling people. So like they're going to pay attention
Mm-hmm.
to what the Red Sox lost, which admittedly was a lot, and a franchise cornerstone in Bogarts, but if you look at what they brought in, they actually, I think, made a lot of really solid, like, shorter term moves. And I still would not be shocked at all if the Red Sox were kind of in the hunt for the wild card in the second half of the season. The Orioles are just the one team that is, super. There's a lot of parity depending on who you ask. And I think that the O's are. I don't know. I still think they're a year away. I'm still a little bit. I expect them to be last place in the division. I think this might be a little bit of a back to reality type of season for them, and then next year maybe take the big step forward.
Oh, there goes gravity.
Right. Oh, there goes gravity.
So, I mean, I guess if you want to go bottom of the top with the AL East, Fangraph says the Orioles at 78 wins and the Red Sox at 83. But I'm willing. This is awful for both of us because I'm about to ask you to talk me into why you're liking the Red Sox more. And I know it's the look.
Tough.
Therapy for both of us is all I have to say. But I like Kenley Jansen the person. I root for Kenley Jansen the person. I want him to succeed. I just have questions about bringing him in. I like Yoshida a lot. I think, he had his first spring training homer, which I think was nice because it's for I think valid reasons and some very not valid reasons. People are quick to be like, "Oh, is his power going to translate?" So I do like Yoshida. It just the defensive alignment concerns me. The Jansen signing is I don't want him to turn into a pumpkin, but I feel like we've been operating under this assumption now for the last 2-3 seasons that with all great closers, I think the wheels fall off at some point. And it's when is that going to happen with him? So
Yeah.
is there something specific that you can point to that I think X factor is a very overused term, but is there somebody that you're looking at that could sell me on what takes them from the 83 wins they're projected to on Fangraphs into that maybe 87, 88 threshold that puts them in the wild card conversation?
Well, first off, relievers don't fall off and blow up until the Detroit Tigers sign them. So he has at least a couple of years left
Okay.
until that reality is staring him in the face. But no, I guess I don't really have one move, and like I really like Yoshida as well. I've been a fan of that one since the second pen hit paper. I know a lot of people think it
Mm-hmm.
was an overpay, but he's a darn good ball player. And I also really like the acquisition signing, I guess I should say, of like Justin Turner. Like he's pushing 40, and I know that he's not going to give you, like a 915 OPS, and he's not going to have the ceiling that Bogarts had, and he's going to be your DH primarily, but like
Mm-hmm.
that lineup really isn't bad. Like you
No,
have
that's fair.
Yoshida, you still have Devers, obviously. You have Justin Turner. You have a bunch of like Tristan Cassis is one of the better prospects in baseball. You basically have Devers, who has like 6 or 7 win potential, surrounded by a bunch of dudes who have 2 to 3.5, maybe at best 4 win potential. And I think that that's a good regular season lineup. And are they going to win the World Series? No. Are they going to win the AL East? No. But I really do think that people are just focusing so much on what Bloom has lost over the last, 2-3 seasons since he's taken over and kind of are refusing to look at, or it's like not cool to look at what they actually brought in. I really don't think this is a bad ball club at all.
I don't think it's bad. No, it for me, if you want to talk about, I think one, and it's really not an acquisition, but if you want to talk about the sort of linchpin of this team's success, the last time that we're about to age ourselves, man. The last time that Chris Sale was fully healthy was 2017.
Yeah,
and he's 28 years old. Like Chris Sale's is his age 34 season now.
Yeah,
that is a crazy thing to think about. And I feel horrifically old for saying that and thinking about that. But if you get, I think, a fully healthy Chris Sale, that to me is, which sucks because I hate to be like, oh, if they stay healthy, because I think it's a little bit unfair, I think, when talking about at the start of the season.
You can say that for like every single team. So.
Exactly. But I think he is just, the last time we saw him, even in the season where he only pitched like 140 innings, I think, what was that in 2018? Like that was still, it was a top 5 Cy Young finish. So
good.
Yeah, even on like a rate basis, when he's not, steam blown out of his ears and train whistle sound effect, 220 inning Chris Sale, we're still talking about maybe one of the 10, 15 best pitchers in baseball. So he's the guy that I've got my eye on. You had the Orioles finishing last, and we've hinted at this in other stuff we've talked about. Is it just a question of the magic isn't there now that there's expectations?
I don't even want to put it that way because I think they have a ton of momentum, and I don't think it's going to be like a wind out of the sail type of effect, right? Like to obviously Tigers fan, like 2022 was a wind out of the sail momentum thing for the Detroit Tigers. Fair. Like I don't think the Orioles are going to go out there and lose 98, but part of it is just the division they play in. I don't care that they're playing less teams in the AL East. They still are comparing their records to those 4 teams.
That is very fair.
And that's a tough sell for me. But I think the biggest thing is just that there is still a lot of holes just all around that roster. And like, I don't want to say like the magic will be gone per se, but like, I do think that over 162 again, like those holes are again, like this isn't going to be a garbage team, but like they could win 75 and be last place in this division. You know what I mean? Like that's not a bad year. That's like 6 games under 500. Like, it's not an awful year, and that's a year that next season they can then add more pieces to and build upon. But there's still a lot of holes in that lineup. There's still a lot of holes at the back end of that rotation, and there's still a ton of holes in that bullpen. Like I think, yes, they're like the new, hot, young, up-and-coming team. They have a ton of top prospects. They're going to be really fun. They're going to win some games they shouldn't. They're going to win some series they shouldn't. But at the end of the season, I still just think over 162, like that's the point of the baseball season, right? To make sure there's no flukes. And I still think that they're probably going to be like an under 500 ball club by the end of it.
I mean, you're talking about a division like, 2022. The Red Sox won 78 games and were a last place team by 5 full games in the division. Yeah. So like, I don't think that you're.
I'm not saying the O's are going to be, tanking or like in the running for the number 1 pick or whatever. I just like they could maybe go 500 and be last. Like,
my thing with them, and this is definitely slightly a call coming from within the house, it's just who is going to be you get down to the last week of the season and you're still in the wild card race hypothetically if you're Baltimore and you got a 3-game series. Like, who are your 3 best starters?
Yeah.
Who are your 3 best starters going to be come late September? I mean, there's guys that have pedigree and the capability to do it. I mean, like we've seen Kyle Gibson, like he's got an all-star nod, like, but
people forget about 2021 first half Rangers Kyle Gibson, baby.
yeah,
That
like,
dude was a dog.
it's a very good player. And like we've seen flashes of that. And I think that like Cole Irvin is a great like 4 starter. Like
Yep.
I think the Baltimore, I think the phrase I love to hammer to death about teams like this is adults in the room.
Yeah.
Like Cole Irvin is a great adult in the room in the rotation, but John Means is supposed to come back. And the last time we saw John Means, like that's somebody that is an undisputed 3 best pitcher, but is he going to be that for how long he's missed? And my only concern with them and my hope is that they can get that figured out. And obviously, like you mentioned, they have the farm system. And I think they have the 40-man even to go out and acquire starting pitching. I'm surprised they weren't in on the Pablo Lopez sweepstakes. That felt like a very nice addition for them to make. Obviously, Grayson Rodriguez sent down to the minors, which is I'm not super concerned. I think it's more just if you're starting out the year on this bad of a foot, we don't want you to still hold the expectation of you're going to eventually become our ace for our staff. So don't worry, opening day against the Yankees in the Bronx, you got it, buddy.
Have fun,
I think it's nice to let him iron that out, but I don't know. It's like I said, I made the same joke yesterday when we were talking about Baltimore. I have my bird allegiances. I'll talk about the Blue Jays. I'm rooting for them. I hope they can scrap their way to, I think a little bit over 500 is a fair expectation.
Sure. I think the ceiling is there for sure. I don't deny that.
As I said, I'll shift to the team that I think is going to win the AL East, which is the Toronto Blue Jays. When I look at I really love the Varsho acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Merrifield acquisition at the end, at like the deadline last year, felt sort of like a half-hearted punch. And I feel like they just really needed to make a legitimate add to a lineup. Varsho, I think, like very comfortably broke out and proved just the raw talent that he has. I know you have a soft spot for catchers, so I'm sure that catcher maybe
wanted one of them.
Yeah, catcher maybe in air quotes with Varsho at this point, but I love that flexibility because I love Danny Jansen, but he has not shown a clean bill of health, and I just love that they have a backup plan essentially of, hey, if one of our all-star caliber catching hitters goes down, we've got another one.
Moreno in the wing. They still have Kirk. Like
Moreno went to
Arizona. Moreno got traded.
So,
you're right. But that was like the big thing in this offseason was they had a ton of catchers, and people were like, they should trade them all. And so they got good value. I agree with you.
And I think what was smart as well is everyone is like, well, they should trade 2 of them. Obviously, Kirk is. And I think that this is maybe me getting a little philosophical on the future of the game, but I definitely think that we're entering a phase of baseball where platooning is not seen as a commentary on a player's talent and is more seen as a necessity, especially at the catcher position.
Catchers are like goalies in hockey at this point. Every good team has 2. Nobody's, like Molina just retired. Like nobody's going out there and playing 140 games behind the dish anymore.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, felt very, I think, the end of an old guard with Molina hanging up of like, there is no, it's going to feel weird. Like I will get to the Cardinals in a sec, but like
you need 2. You need 2.
Yeah, and so I think it was really smart of them to trade the one that I think had the most clear, I don't want to say upside necessarily, because I think Kirk has the most upside in terms of raw talent, but they trade, I think, the biggest wild
most variance. Yeah.
Yes. Sure. And I think that was the smart thing. And I think that Arizona was a perfect dance partner in that regard with the logjam they had in the outfield. So I don't know. I really like the acquisition. Chris Bassett, I like Kevin Gossman. Jose Brios was legitimately one of the worst starting pitchers in Major League Baseball last year.
Yeah.
And I think if he becomes even, he could be a low 4s ERA guy. And the fact that he can eat innings like that, like if he returns to, I think, competency with Manoah in that rotation, I really like what Toronto is doing. And I just have questions about the Yankees rolling it back with Donaldson. I like they added Volpe, but there's Boone. Just I don't know if he's got the right eye to take the Yankees to what they for sure could be over a 162 game sample. Playoffs is maybe a different conversation, but I don't know. In a vacuum, maybe Boone, but over 162, I have questions with the Yankees.
I do too. I have questions about the bottom of their lineup. Is really the biggest thing for me. They clearly have the top end talent, but I think last year what kind of killed them over stretches. They went on losing stretches for sure, and
Yeah.
then on one point they were on pace to like win 115 games or something like within the first couple of months of the season, and then they cooled off, and then obviously fell short in October for the millionth year in a row. And like I think that a lot of it does have to do with how consistent the supporting cast, I'll call it, of that offense can be this season. I love Volpe as a player. Like that's a dude that I think is gonna kind of inject a lot of I don't know, life, energy, whatever like stereotypical thing you want to say when a rookie breaks camp. And I think that if he plays up to what's expected out of him, then that's a nice help to an already nice core that you're just kind of trying to expand upon. So, and then pitching health, but you can say that about any team. But they've already started off really rough on that foot. So, yeah,
The
definitely some
Montas
question marks for
acquisition,
sure.
the Montas acquisition looks scarier and more precarious with every passing day. And I hope he stays healthy because when he's healthy and pitching, he's a treat to watch play. But it's concerning. The only team we haven't talked about in the AL East is Tampa, which I think is very fitting that we're like talking about, this amazing, exciting division, given this really in-depth. And then with Tampa, it's really just, I wish Curtis Mead had made the opening day roster. That's kind of my only hard opinion I have about Tampa, because I think he's a phenomenal hitting prospect. And it's no shade to Yandy Diaz, but it just felt very like it's time to move Yandy to first and let Mead,
Yeah, I think they can both coexist, which is what makes it weird. But
yeah.
I'm
and
sure
then when Manzardo is ready, they still can coexist because one of them can just DH.
Right. Yeah, I think that's just I don't know. It's the Rays, like service manipulation.
I know. And what's so frustrating about it is like we just talked about Volpe, and like we'll get to, one of our favorite prospects, probably I think maybe both of our favorite prospects in the game right now later. But like there's something so cool about getting to see these guys called up and be given the opportunity to I don't want to say cheat their own service time because that makes it sound like I'm bootlegging.
Pay attention to what teams do what. The teams that are off rip, A, either willing to spend money, or B, are trying to compete from day one, put their top prospects on their opening day roster, and the teams that are either cheaper and or aren't necessarily looking to compete this season over 162 don't.
And what's frustrating, I think the part that's most frustrating about it probably from a player's perspective as well. Obviously, now that, the minor leagues, like they're going to be unionizing, working in tandem with the MLBPA, which is fantastic.
Yeah, great.
And I think players will take note of this because, like you said, if you're manipulating service time, you're either a team that doesn't really need that piece because you're already competing, or you're, like Oakland, who's definitely not competing and probably also going to manipulate service time.
Yeah.
And when it comes time for those teams to spend money, like those guys that got their service time manipulated, like I think Chris Bryant's a great example of this.
Yeah,
like he was not re-signing with the Cubs when he hit free agency. I really don't think that was ever even a remote possibility, because of the fact that even though they were trying to compete and they were ready and willing to spend money now that they were good again, what's the incentive after being treated like that? And I just think that, if the guys that the Cubs brought in, they talked to KB at the time, I'm sure they did, and he told it how it is. Like, this is what they did to me. And I think that with the current CBA, I am excited to see that ripple effect and hopefully forcing some of those more tighter purse stringed owners, I'll leave it at that, forcing them to spend a little bit more money.